Hello, my fellow nerds, Kalko here. So, not too much of the fandom reads the manga, and that's fine. I too have a low attention span. Plus, not everyone has the time, not everyone can find where it is, etc. I read the latest updates on hetascanlations.tumblr.com, so I highly suggest you go check them out. They translate everything from Hima's blog. But I know what you might be thinking. Goodness, there's just so much for me to catch up on. I mean, thankfully the anime covered a lot of what I missed in World Stars, but how am I ever going to catch up on a year's worth of manga that happened after that? Well, my fellow Italians, this is what this video is for. So for those of you who don't want to read everything that happened, I'll just give you the highlights and the important stuff that happened in the manga so that you can catch up and understand what's going on in the fandom, and then go back and read whatever you find interesting. I'll only be going through the World Stars as of the comic restarting about a year ago. I'm not going to go back through all the comics that came out over a year ago that the anime missed. Perhaps I'll save that for another day. So, starting from a year and 2 months ago up until now, here is what has been going on in the Hetalia manga. It starts off with Veneciano in front of the International Gourmet Court, giving a testimony on the case of messed up Italian cuisine in America. Italy was so disgusted by America's bastardization of pineapple on pizza that he took him to court. And apparently France is supposed to be the defense attorney? And England's the prosecutor? Honestly, I think it should be the other way around. And Germany's the judge. Dude, I've eaten German food. You should be barred from standing within 50 feet of this court. So, America is in violation of bastardizing everyone's food dishes. America's like, just let me eat honey-covered pizza, and Italy's like, I'm dying inside every time you put extra cheese on pizza. So America makes everyone try his pizza, and they're all like, okay, it's not bad. Except for France, who's like, apologize to the cheese, you sick fuck. America is found not guilty, and the case is dismissed. Our next arc is an Asean Conference, and this is where we get a bunch of new characters. The Philippines, Singapore, and Indonesia. Wait a minute. Has anyone else noticed that there are 9 people sitting at this table, but only 5 of them speak? Did Himaruya forget he just drew extra people? So I guess we got Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar in here somewhere, but they just don't talk the entire time, and I guess we just don't know which ones they are. The meeting goes ahead, and Philippines is like, these meetings need to be more Southeast Asian, and everyone's like, yeah, but what does that mean? So they all discuss different ways they can hold the meeting. We then get a bit of information on the new characters. The Philippines loves selfies and is very cheerful and energetic. Indonesia is a sweet tooth, who is trying to be formal and serious at first, something he has to do because he's been growing a lot and lots of nations look up to him now. But he's not really comfortable being all stiff and formal and is really laid back and friendly, but a bit shy. And bought himself a sick motorbike. Singapore is small, but presents himself very well, but he's secretly messy. Not that anyone will ever find that out. He also likes to push ads every 5 minutes or so like Spotify. Vietnam is the serious one of the group, or tries to be, and apparently is dangerous when drunk. And Malaysia decided, fuck this meeting, I'm going to catch sea cucumbers. They talk about improving their image, and Philippines tries to tell everyone Thailand's dirty secrets, and Thailand is just like, Arena. And so ASEAN invites the tourism king, Veneciano, to help. Which I find odd because Thailand has been constantly ranked as the #1 tourist destination in the entire continent of Asia. Italy basically spent time as being a tourist in Southeast Asia and gives everyone his feedback. Italy says he liked everything except the bats and the bugs, and the key to being successful is to have a huge inheritance of cool archaeological sites from your grandpa. So basically, as long as you have an inheritance, you'll be successful in life. England created that infamous pin game that we see ads of constantly. And then everyone talks about the mobile games they play. Germany likes things like the fishing industry and the grain cultivation simulators, so he likes working in the games he plays. Malaysia finally shows up and missed the entire meeting. Here we learn that Malaysia wants to be a doting big brother to Singapore, but Singapore doesn't even want to look at his face. We learned that Malaysia is a guy who is open-hearted and affectionate but takes honor seriously, and he and Singapore have a bit of tension because they have to share a water bill. Singapore is openly hostile towards Malaysia but is normal around everyone else, and we learned that Philippines is very ADHD and Malaysia wants Singapore to treat him like he treats everyone else. Malaysia, in denial, realizes that Singapore is only hostile towards him, so he concludes that he just must be special. Italy takes his Axis friends to a recreated Roman dining hall with Roman music, menu, and costumes for the customers. Germany fully embraces the costume, and Japan comments that girls serve food in traditional dress at his place, but it's not nearly as immersive as this. Now America brings China to the gourmet food court over the origin of orange chicken. China is conflicted because he doesn't want to lose to America, but he also doesn't want to claim orange chicken. The court rules in China's favor, but China isn't too sure how he feels about that. America also thanks him for inventing the crab ragoon, and China's like, yeah, sure, I totally invented that, but is internally screaming about who would create such a thing. Russia announces a list of nations that aren't working hard enough to be his friends so he can shame people for it in public. But he says it's so he can become better friends with everyone in the world, imposing restrictions so that everyone knows how inconvenient it is not to be friends with Russia. The first 3 nations he gaslights are the Baltics. Lithuania is done with this shit, Latvia is flipping his shit because he's being called out for being a bad little boy, and Estonia is losing his shit and clowning on Russia. And of course, America is at the top, but Ukraine is also there too, and I see flags of Poland, Czechia, and the UK. Lithuania takes the threat seriously, Latvia contemplates stripping naked, and Estonia can't take it seriously for 2 seconds. Then Latvia's doorbell starts ringing nonstop, and surprise, bitch, it's Russia! Or rather, a cutout of him. Russia tries to do the same at Estonia's house, but gets wrecked by Estonia's security system. That he is operating from Finland's house, because he's a pussy. Lithuania is begrudgingly concerned about Poland. Ukraine calls, and apparently everyone on the list is receiving a cardboard cutout of Russia. Ukraine is having tea with hers and asks Lithuania for any spare Russias. Lithuania notices Poland's house is dark and then sees a spare key in the bushes, most likely because he forgot his keys at America's house once while at a gaming tournament and stayed at Lithuania's house for far too long. Or so Lithuania assumes. So Lithuania does some breaking and entering and hears Poland screaming. He runs in to save him, only to learn that Poland is just streaming on Twitch and has a sick gaming setup, and he's like, yeah, Liat, I'm totally aware of the list. I'm not that stupid. Lithuania yells at him about keeping his keys outside and being so fucking stupid, and Poland's like, I'm not that dumb, I never leave my keys outside. And then, ominous power outage. And Russia conducts this horror movie scene for Poland, and Poland's like, Liat, this is fucking dumb. They clean up and conclude with the Witcher reference. Russia looks at what everyone has been doing with the cutouts. England put it on eBay. America took it to the beach and is now making vlogs with it, which makes Russia embarrassed for some reason, making him take away America's cutout. Belarus is glad she's not on the list, but sad she didn't get a cutout. Canada calls and thanks Russia for the gift and sends cookies as a thanks. And in typical Canadian fashion, he apologizes for whatever he did to make Russia mad. And that's the end. We move on to the Mausoleum of Augustus finally being restored and ready for tourists after being used as a dumping ground for trash for years. Thanks to Mr. Telecom Italia, it's clean. Imagine being a country so rich with cultural sites that you use a 1,000-year-old mausoleum that hosts the body of one of your most famous emperors as a dumpster. Think about it. This actually happened. Romano gets so excited he accidentally breaks a statue and has an existential crisis. Then Egypt shows up and offers to fix it with tape and glue, to which Romano refuses because he's seen what Egypt's done in the past, and he doesn't like it. Apparently this alludes to how ancient Egyptian artifacts are often restored cheaply. He then decides to fix it with money, and Mr. Telecom Italia shows up to save the day by throwing money at it. And then it turns out that Italy was the one who sculpted it and that it wasn't a priceless artifact. Oopsie. Malaysia is in denial because Singapore blocked him. Maybe it's because you send him 80 freaking messages a day? Damn, Malaysia! Malaysia claims he can't be blocked by Singapore because everyone likes him. But apparently nobody likes him. Bulgaria and Romania come out of a meeting full of being yelled at and decide to get a beer when they see Moldova begging and dancing for money in the street. Romania says that Moldova can always come to him if he needs help, and Moldova's like, Nah, I really can't. Leaving Romania to cry about how he's a terrible big brother, Bulgaria suggests not to worry about trying to fix what's impossible and suggests getting drunk instead. And then they did it. Germany and Prussia argue about how to design a new car, so in Germany interviews Italy about what he wants in his car, and both Italy suggest a car that can handle tight turns, is colorful and photogenic, and looks nice in front of their house. The next world meeting, they're examining happiness scales. Then the speaker says that the big brother nations need to try harder, and everyone gets triggered, especially Romania. The Benelux trio call bullshit, saying that Netherlands is just the best big brother ever because they're all rich as fuck. Singapore ignores Malaysia and everyone demands that they release the rankings, and everyone is once again triggered by them. Germany tells him to STFU because he'll explain the ratings and debunk them to make everyone feel better. And as older brothers are brought up, we get introduced to England's big brothers, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Scotland introduces himself as the ultimate football rival of England, and how he plans to be independent and leave and rejoin the EU and blah 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 blah. Northern Ireland calls him out on his bullshit, and he backs down. Wales says he's bad at arguing with England, but loves creating fantasies. The UK brothers realize that they haven't determined who is older or younger. They never really came up with a result and just made a bunch of memes, and Wales starts worshipping dragons again. At the end, they finally come up with a list of rules that everyone agrees on, including that England agrees that everyone is older than him as long as he gets to be the main representative. Anyways, Wales and Scotland then start to argue about who invented King Arthur. Then Spain butts in and says that he was actually based on a Spanish fairy tale, so technically he's Spanish. But then Romano butts in saying that at that time Hispania was part of the Roman Empire, so technically King Arthur is Italian. Then Prussia claims that the Holy Roman Empire is descendant of Rome, so therefore he must be German. Then Romania claims that he was Rome's descendant again, so therefore he must be Romanian. And then everyone in the damn room tries to claim King Arthur. Scotland wants to live on his own and join the EU, so to do that he challenges England to a UK card battle, which is like Yu-Gi-Oh! But for limeys.
It's time to duel!
They continue playing this weird game, and Germany, who is moderating for some reason, gets weirded out. They all eat scones at the end with a very confused Germany. Italy sees that England is upset after the card battle and goes to confront him, and England's like, "You wouldn't understand." And Italy's like, "Yep, you're right, I don't." But then he gives a spiel about how he and his brother fight all the time, but they're still close and love each other and blah blah blah. And then he mentions how the UK bros love his house and go visit him for delicious food all the time. And England is like, "Edible food? Yes, that's exactly what I need to bond with my brothers." Meanwhile, Wales is doing a Dragon Crisps resurrection spell in the middle of the night, waking England, because he's hungry for that nostalgic flavor. Wales talks about how he taught England magic and that he should take it easy with his magic more, since he talks to fairies like business partners now. England agrees, and Wales teaches him passive-aggressive magic. While teaching him how to talk to the paintings, Wales notices that England's eyes roll to the back of his head whenever he uses magic, which makes me wonder if his pupils literally vanish every time he makes this face. Well, that changes the way you see Hetalia, doesn't it? Wales sees a Benelux food exchange and wants to do it with his brothers. So they do this, and they realize that all their food is brown, dull, and disgusting. Scotland brought haggis, red pudding, and arbroath. Everything Northern Ireland brought was made of potatoes. England's is so bad that Wales can't think of anything to say about it, and Wales just brought a plate of leeks, which he eats raw. All seems ruined, but then everyone starts sharing drinks and watching football. Then all is well again. We get a flashback of the Ireland brothers and how they drifted apart. Basically, England came into the picture, and then Northern Ireland just started ghosting him. Turns out it was a flashback by our newest character, Ireland, who talks to a mysterious old man that gives him advice and screams and summons leprechauns in his sleep, waking up all of his neighbors. I think this old man is supposed to be a leprechaun, but I really don't know, because he really doesn't look like a leprechaun. So Ireland decides to spy on the UK bros and finds them all drunk, naked, and crying about football, which confuses Ireland. We also learn that Ireland also likes to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with America, causing every American with Irish ancestry watching Hetalia to have their headcanons confirmed. Wales is England's BFF and really fucking loves dragons. North Ireland doesn't know when to hang up, and is kind of bland. Scotland is the Romano of the family, but he's secretly nice underneath. Ireland is a loud boy and is scared to talk to North Ireland about his problems. Problems that the two really need to talk about. Northern Ireland catches Ireland in the bushes, and they both freak the hell out, causing everyone to come over. Ireland sees that all the UK bros are drunk and nude, so the leprechaun tells him to GTFO, and he does. Ireland sleeps soundly that night, but then screams in panic when the old man is gone, waking up his neighbors once again. The end. Japan is watching football with Australia and New Zealand, and he is shocked when they start stripping. They claim to inherit it from England. Then there's a whole Brexit arc where France wants to bathe in England's pain after Brexit. So he tries to tease him and taunt him about all the things he's missing out, and even dresses up in a tuxedo, planning to marry England's misery, as England has to discuss at the world meeting everything that has happened after Brexit. And the comic shows all the difficulties coming after Brexit, like Ireland and North Ireland having difficulties, and most importantly, trade regulations. Ah yes, nothing more exciting than trade regulations. So England has all this stuff, but nowhere to sell it to, and France thinks that he's going to cry and beg to be in the EU again, but England gets around this and says fuck you by selling all of his meat to the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and this teeny tiny South Africa, but especially the Philippines. I guess the Philippines just loves that British meat. And then Germany asks if Scotland has changed his mind about joining the EU and leaving the UK, and Scotland's just like, it's not like I care about my brother or anything, but baka. The next arc involves Australia, New Zealand, and America speed running, getting a midnight snack, and teaching Japan about it. And then Canada comes in and he's like, I'm the king of midnight snacking, and America makes a shake and this donut burger thing and beats his record, and honestly, this whole arc was really confusing and really boring, except for these really weird pop-up ads. Then we learn that America looks after his boss's pets, and that's part of his job. And he also talks about how his previous presidents' pets were really wild. Spain wakes up tied mostly naked to a table by Portugal, and Portugal says he'll let him go if Spain plays a quiz game with him. After Spain answers the question, Portugal will let him go, and for each question he gets wrong, he'll pour olive oil all over him. Yeah, this is definitely somebody's fetish. And if it wasn't before, it is now. This horrifies Spain because to him this is a sinful waste of this beautiful resource called olive oil. Spain nails the first question, but on the second question, Portugal leads Spain to believe that he's going to ask him about olive oil, but then goes to add other vegetable oils in as well and ask which country produces the most of them all, which throws Spain into a crisis because why would anyone ever use oil that isn't from the olive? Spain, using his big boy brain, guesses it's either China or America due to their greasy foods, and then finally determines that China is the vegetable oil master. But the correct answer was Indonesia, so Spain meets an oily demise. He gets the next two questions wrong and gets bukaked in olive oil. For the last question, Portugal asks how Spain felt as the oil was dumped on him. And then suddenly Spain just communes with the spirit of the ingredients of the olive oil. And they tell him that they were proud to be dumped on him. I shit you not. And then Spain answers that it made his body glossy. And then Portugal takes that as a correct answer and lets him go. And then we cut to Spain explaining to Romano his new product, olive oil for the body. And Romano is just like, Spain, just, what the fuck? Romano tries this olive oil for the body, and apparently Venetiano has been making this body olive oil for a long time, and then Romano blows up saying he'll just use Spain's. He ends up liking the body oil.
Butterfly.
Farfalla. Schmetterling. Penna. Kugelschreiber.
For the last time, we don't call them Kugelscheibers anymore. We call them Kulis. I don't know a single German that still says Kugelschreiber, unless we're being ironic. And that's the end until now. And so, why did I do this, you may ask? Well, because I'm planning on starting a monthly series. This month in Hetalia, where I discuss all things Hetalia related for the month, including the manga. So I'm going to be doing monthly Hetalia updates, making sure that you at least have Hetalia content once a month. But until then, that was 1 mark higher on your history test. Thank you for watching.